It is on now. Thank you, Wayman. That's what you're here for. All right, again, welcome. Good morning. Legislative and Human Resources Committee is about to start at 8:31. We'll start with the public comment. If anyone has anything they want to speak to the committee about, you may do so. You have up to 3 minutes. If not, we'll move on to item number 2, which is approval of the minutes from April 29, 2019. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It is moved. Support?
Support.
Supported. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Next item on the agenda is a performance measurement review on the circuit court. Andy Thalheimer is here. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I bring greetings from all the judges, the circuit court judges, and those assigned to the 17th Circuit Court. As usual on a Monday morning, many of them are trying to navigate their dockets and get a good start off to the week, but busy judging somewhere. In particular, I bring greetings from Judge Trusak, the chief judge, as well as his pro tem, Judge Feeney, and Judge McNabb, who is the presiding judge of the family division, and they constitute the leadership judge team. I'll jump right into the performance measures. Before I do get started, I'm sorry, in the list of all the indicators of performance measures, despite Sherry Hall's reminder that there were a few zeros in there, I left them in there. That was my fault. So if you see a few zeros, I will update them. I do apologize for the oversight. It was completely my fault. We had some turnover in supervisors when we were actually doing them, and then I feel like I've kind of lost a month of May with some things going on. So I do apologize for that. I can answer any questions about that towards the end, and I hope to leave time to do so. Okay, so this performance measure presentation should demonstrate the 17th Circuit Court's commitment to align with the county board's priorities. I hope to highlight a few of the indicators that show the job that we're doing, as well as some achievements that we've had since I last presented to you. You'll also be able to see some of the things that are on the horizon that we anticipate, and some of the opportunities we've had to work with county departments and some other courts in getting a few of these things accomplished. So some examples of our goals as related to the county's priorities. Again, revenues, we have been working very hard. We continue to work very hard to leverage any funding that is available for us. We've had some rather big successes recently, which I'll share later in the presentation. As far as efficient use of resources, I always put timely case processing in there, and I'm going to highlight that later as well. I think that first and foremost, that is our goal across the street, is to make sure that the cases that come before us are resolved appropriately and as soon as possible. Our safe community, we deal with a lot of juvenile probation. Juvenile probation is going to be something that is going to be expanding if and when and if we get 17-year-olds. I hope to demonstrate a little bit of confidence in you all that we're going to be able to do a good job with them when that happens. For citizen participation, for the past few years we've been doing a customer satisfaction survey for the court. So I'm going to share a little of the results with you on that. Also, our jury utilization form. I do want to touch on that at some point during the presentation. The state is now, that's a requirement that the State Court Administrator's Office is having us do, and there's a certain formula that you have to utilize with them. Our number looks quite low. And while it is, and we are trying to improve it, I do think that the policy that we've taken with the 17th Circuit as far as calling jurors is one that's quite friendly to the public. It's one week or one trial. So basically, if you get called into jury duty, you come in, and if you called for a trial that day, or if you get picked for a trial that day, then you serve on that trial. If not, then you're done. You don't have to worry about coming back in other weeks. I find ways that I could probably artificially inflate that utilization number if I said, okay, you're going to have to serve for 3 months. So you have to make, so eventually we're going to need a juror, and that would make our numbers look much better. But I think it kind of defeats the purpose of, you know, making jury duty be as painless as possible to our citizens.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you. I just have a question. What are the, do you even know, ads that someone ever has been called for?
It's probably pretty fair.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't surprise me that I hear that. I mean, we call in 100 to 200, you know, every week or so. So it seems like over time, the odds are, I mean, it's a completely random draw, or random assignment. So I guess like I said, it doesn't surprise me. I've known lots of people in different communities that say the same thing. You know, I never get called. And then I know other people that seem to have been called 2 or 3 times.
I have a couple of friends that are on their 4th round.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, did someone else have a question? Or?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right, and finally, some proactive and innovative things that we're doing. We've got more specialty courts going on, and that seems to be the trend statewide, and it's actually being encouraged in many areas, and we're seeing some positive results with it. And finally, the high quality of life. Again, I think that the efficient use of our docket to make sure that that things are done in a timely manner is probably the most important thing that we do. Okay, the accessible and fair environment for users of the 17th Circuit Court. Last fall, we conducted a survey. So basically, anyone that entered or exited or both through the public entrance over there across the street was handed a survey or given the opportunity to fill out a survey. It was completely voluntary. We did it for about 4 or 5 days. I think we had roughly 200 respondents to it. And the survey consisted of 10 questions, mostly about how were you treated, were things done fairly, was it an undue amount of time that it took you to accomplish your business. I did pick 4 of the questions to demonstrate. Overall, the survey was very positive. Courts throughout the state do this, and typically it is a little more positive than some people think it's going to be. But I did want to highlight for sure the first 3 especially, that 89% felt that their business was able to be taken care of in a reasonable amount of time. We get so many people there across the street, and this survey was done in conjunction. I mean, we pulled out just the 17th Circuit Court's responses, but the probate court is over there, the 61st District Court is over there. Everyone got a survey, so there's just a lot of people coming in and out. You never really know what they're going to need or want when they come in, and I think this is a testament to the staff of how committed they are that so many people responded in a positive way to that. Treated with courtesy and respect by court staff was 94%. I mean, I think that that's just great, and I can vouch for the fact, sitting at some of the front windows, that court staff are not always treated with that same courtesy and respect. And then I added the way my case handled was fair, because it seems like that could skew the results a little bit with the 4th question of whether or not the case was favorable. So again, 65% thought that the case was favorable to them, yet 79% answered that the case was fair. I guess some of us kind of intuitively think that if the case is favorable to them, then it was fair. If it was not, then it wasn't. So I think that the procedural justice or the perception of that is over there. I have read literature that when surveyed, the public who actually have used the court system kind of rate the system higher than those who have not. And I think that this would kind of validate that research that I've seen. Okay, to provide the effective case flow and efficient case flow management system, basically getting our cases done in a timely manner. We have so many, and in your packet, I mean, there are so many different case types that come through. So I've highlighted these, and I picked these for a few big reasons. First and foremost, if we were to add personal protection orders to this, we'd have probably about 95% of the total filings that we get over there. So these are kind of the most common filings that we see across the street. And also, and probably more importantly, I picked these cases because people going through them are probably not having a lot of fun while doing so. So the fact that we're able to get them done, again, in a reasonable amount of time, and we get over 15,000 filings over there. So there are a lot of cases, and they're all treated, you know, they're all treated individually, but yet we have so many of them. So it really is a lot of hard work from pretty much everyone in that building to get these done in a reasonable time period. The days, the amount of days, 728 or 301, 364, whatever it is, those do come as suggested guidelines from the State Court Administrator's Office. But they also come, they're also pretty much in line with the National Center for State Courts as to what they deem to be. They would expect 100 of these cases to be processed within these time guidelines. Now they've dropped that to like 98, 97%, because sometimes due process, appropriate due process requires things to go out a little longer, especially when we're talking about kids and where, you know, removals are involved and we want to get youth back to their families. All right, the next, probation services for adjudicated juveniles. This is a big part of what we do across the street as far as our services. As I'm sure many of you know, that the juvenile system in the state of Michigan is pretty much a county-operated system. While there are some state services, pretty much all the community-based effort and supervision of youth once they're adjudicated comes from county personnel. So I've selected a few indicators for this to show to you. The first shows that when we have a kid on community probation, very few of them are committing more crimes. I think that recidivism rate, which is what I would call this, is a very important factor in this. Not the only factor in how well we're doing, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but obviously a very, very important one. The second one, the percentage of parents who are satisfied. Our goal is that we're not going to be in the lives of these children forever. I mean, we're there to provide an intervention, to provide services that we can, but we can't be there forever. So parents typically are going to be there forever. So we try to involve the parents as much as we can, and we survey the parents after each youth is closed off probation to see what their what their perception of the service was, and we do pretty well. You know, over 90% said that they were satisfied with the community probation officer. The other thing we do, we try to divert cases that are low risk so that we don't, saddle a youth with a long-term record for a long time. And we do monitor to say, okay, if we are diverting cases, are those youth coming back? Because if they are, then we're probably diverting too many. Because obviously we are there for a purpose, and many kids do need the services that we can provide for them. So as you can see, that number is getting lower, so I think we're doing a pretty good job. Our case diversions. The pretrial services and bond bail reform is going to be a major initiative. The governor just formed a task force alongside the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court to kind of review this, and I believe one of our commissioners was selected to be on that committee. Our court services department across the street, Tim Boheist, Danielle Castillo are the supervisors, but the whole unit, they've got us very well positioned for whatever recommendations or whatever is coming up. They're going to be able to do. I mean, they've been providing these risk assessment for district court judges, and just the whole philosophy of trying to limit people from going to jail if the only reason they're in there is because they don't have enough money to get out. You know, the purpose of jail before an adjudication or before a conviction is failure to, the risk of flight to not appear, and also that they could be a danger to the community. So those are basically the two things that Tim and his team over there have been providing. Again, the perception, and you can look at the measures, and you can see that, again, we're kind of trending in the direction where, we're having fewer of these cash surety bonds available, a few more of the 10% bonds, and then personal recognizance where, you can go, just make sure you come back. You can see that those are kind of trending in the direction that would, I assume, would be favorable. Again, the perception is strong that the current bail system penalizes those without money. And the court services basically raises awareness and gives a standardized assessment of risk for the youth in front of district court judges to give them information that they may need to make those decisions on whether to incarcerate or detain someone prior to trial. Okay, some significant budget issues that we are seeing. The state of Michigan reimbursement delays and policy changes, I think, has been on this list for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. And I will say that I think we've successfully navigated the policy changes. I mean, I think we know where they stand, they know where we stand, and everyone has adjusted. There has been, I mean, that's a very simple way to put all the work that's gone into that, but there's been legislative changes, and so that I feel reasonably comfortable with. However, we still do experience delays from time to time, whether that be, you know, it's a computer system error, or, you know, there might be something that, you know, kind of a detail, dot an I, cross a T, a math error, you know, different things like that. So that we are still seeing. I did not check this morning with my finance director, but as of last week, we were behind a few months in reimbursement, and a few months in reimbursement for a county our size is in the millions of dollars. So it's always something that we're, I guess, aware of as we can be, and you know, we send reminders, and we try to make sure that that is a you know, not a common thing. But again, for 3 years, it's been on my list to make sure I share with you all. E-filing, this is still looming. We have, I mean, I think when we were first told that Kent County was going to be one of the first waves, that it was going to happen sometime the end of 2018, or by 2018 we'd be up and running. Then we said, when the time comes, the team from the state court and the vendor will come in, and then you've got about a 6-month lead time. We have not heard from that team yet. So it's still looming. I mean, we're aware of it. We're a little bit on hold, because whatever the state comes up with, we want to make sure the work that we've done is going to communicate with whatever system that the state sets up. So it definitely on the horizon. I'm assuming there will be changes required to our case management system, maybe some other things that IT is going to be a part of, and has been a part of. We are told that there is money in the state's budget to pay for those changes, and they've actually reached out to try and get some idea of how much that will be. So I guess that's pretty good news compared to them not asking. Indigent defense, I think that this could be also listed under a collaboration. Craig Paul, I don't know if he's here or not, but has taken a lead with a lot of this, and has done, I owe him a great thank you, because he's done a really good job with getting all the courts together to get these changes implemented. I mean, it's the first sets required stuff with the sheriff's department, and mostly district courts. The next 4 changes that are coming, or the next 3 standards that are up for review right now, are going to be a little bit more. They will affect the circuit court more than the first ones have. And finally, raise the age with our detention capacity. Again, raise the age, making 17-year-olds part of the juvenile system. As I said, I think we're well positioned to handle 17-year-olds and do a good job with them. However, our detention center, which is being renovated right now to go to 98 beds, we were really hoping to use those extra beds for our own residential treatment, rather than you know, contract that out or outsource those types of things. If we get 17-year-olds, that capacity could be sucked up by the 17-year-olds that just need straight detention services. We just don't know. I mean, we're anticipating about a 30% increase in our caseloads with juveniles when we get 17-year-olds. But a lot of it will have to wait and see, and we will obviously trying to implement things before that happens, to make sure that we're ready when it does. Significant accomplishment, the youth level of service. The concept of this is that we provide a standardized risk assessment to all the juveniles that come under our jurisdiction for formal probation. And the concept is that it's a validated tool that will, again, along with the judge and the probation officer assigned to the case, will kind of help us, you know, put a youth in the appropriate service and give them the appropriate level of intervention. Another benefit is that there's post-test scores too. So you can you give the youth a test 1 month, 3 months later, and so on. And that will give us some indication of not only, again, I said we measure recidivism, but also are we making a change in these kids' lives that are kind of reducing those factors, those risk factors that would basically, in many cases, give the indication they would lead to be more criminal behavior in the future. Again, I mean, there's a lot of science to this, but there's also a lot of art. The project has been huge. I mean, all our probation officers, there's a lot of fidelity to this instrument and a lot of data collection that has to be done to make sure that it's accurate. Brian Vogel, my deputy, along with all the probation officer supervisors and probation officers, had to really do a lot to get this up and running. We are doing it now, and the analysis is going to be coming. So we are looking forward to that for sure. Detention center build out, another huge and expensive project, and also another collaborative effort between facilities management, Al Jano and Linda Renslin. They just really do a good job. I mean, there's so many things to keep straight. And I also have to give some credit to, a lot of credit to the detention center staff. Stacy McGinnis and Hugh Martin are the superintendent and deputy superintendent. They've maintained the standards that are necessary for licensing, for security, for safety, and those types of things while you have, construction workers in there. What seems like 100 years ago when I worked in a similar environment, there's kind of this constant vigilance that is required of employees. You can't leave your keys laying around. You can't leave doors open just for a minute. When you have people doing construction in there, there's tools that, you have to make sure they're not laying around, hammers, screwdrivers, that type of thing. So there's just been a lot more to balance than what is already a difficult job. Some good news. I applied for and received. I say there was, believe me, a lot of help in doing this for a federal grant to kind of assist the current mental health court grant that we've got going. The grant award is $2 million. It's $400,000 over 5 years. What it will allow us to do is expand and improve the existing mental health court that we do, our task court, treatment and support court. We're very excited about it. We have until December to start reporting some information, but we're on it. We've got people in place that are ready to do so. Some key collaborations, our school justice partnership, which has resulted in kind of our own little, I guess, quasi specialty court or treatment court, which is for truancy issues. We also continue our girls' court, our task court, as I just mentioned. Problem-solving courts are certainly being encouraged at the state level. They're giving out grants to help with them because they do take a lot of resources, definitely, to do this. Our detention center build I already mentioned, but the facility staff has just been tremendous in all that, as they have been with the other projects that we've done as well. Finally, a look ahead. More specialty courts and our e-filing. Our indigent defense standards, these next standards that come through, they are going to impact how we do things. One of the standards is that the judiciary is completely out of it. I hope that there is some way to at least get the judges' thoughts on the performance of court-appointed attorneys, because they really are in the best position to see how they are doing. Child Welfare Partnership for Children, again, this has been kind of a few years running as well, and we're seeing the judges report to me that kind of the goal of this would be to, I guess, decrease a little the bureaucracy and kind of, grease things a little bit so that services get in place right away when they need them rather than wait for, many approvals. It seems to be doing that. We're still, again, they're measuring this quite a bit, trying to find better ways to measure it, trying to get the state to release some information to measure it more appropriately. But again, from our standpoint, it appears to be doing what it was hoped to do. Finally, I have another mandatory retirement for 2 judges coming up the end of next year. And if you're counting, that will mean in it's 19 now, so in 2021, that will be 7 new judges within the last 6 years of the 14 that we have over there. So lots of turnover. with the judges. And that is it for my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them, or.
All right, good, thank you, Andy. Commissioners, any questions? Yes, Commissioner Melton. Yep, you still have to push the button.
All right, I'm too short. Okay, here we go.
Thank you, and your report was very thorough, but there's one area back on our second page that just really jumped out at me, and I really feel that this obviously sets the tone. I truly believe anywhere we go, and so to have this happen in our court system especially, which can be a scary, threatening, very unusual place for many people, that you're treated with courtesy and respect by court staff is at 94%. That's amazing. It sets such a tone for schools, for coming to the county. Any questions that you have, if you're greeted courteously and you're greeted respectfully, the whole rest of the experience, good or bad, is going to go better. And I just hope you'll share with whomever it is. That's amazingly high marks.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It's an impressive number.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Hennessy?
One thing I did not see in here was the time that there could possibly be.
Carol?
Oh,
Thank you.
I talk with my hands. One thing I did not see was the time that there could possibly be between being placed in the jail and a preliminary hearing when that would go to circuit court, such as for a probation violation.
Well, if they're locked up, a preliminary hearing should happen within 24 hours, again, absent Sunday, for the prelim, where they actually get to, to see a judge, so to speak, if they're brought to jail.
Oh, okay, that it should, and if it doesn't, I mean, can it go, if one judge is, that was in the case, is not available, can it go to another judge, or?
Yeah, we usually have a rotational presiding, what we call a presiding judge in civil criminal for those types of things.
Okay, so it should happen within 24 hours.
It should, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman?
Thank you, Chair. I just noticed this is page 14 of the detailed report. There's an indicator number of foster care placements.
Yeah, and those were the ones that I mentioned at the beginning. There's a few of those. We did not have 0 foster care placements. Those were the ones, again, I had a little turnover with my supervisors. Again, it's completely my oversight, but I will update those numbers.
I see. So it's not that it is
Correct.
0. It's just that the data for the
Correct. I did not-
2018
I did
didn't
not.
make it in there.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Talon?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Andy. Thanks for the report. And want to especially thank the judges who are independently elected and really don't have to do all this stuff. But this is a lot of data, a lot of information, and appreciate the effort to keep us and the community informed on what's happening and how effective things are at the courts. The one piece that I am always interested in is the recidivism piece. And, you talk about it with juvenile probation, but I didn't actually see those numbers that you had in your slides in the report. I couldn't find them. And I couldn't find other recidivism data I'm wondering if that's something that you typically report on in performance measures or something that you might consider
Yes.
moving forward.
Yes, we do. And I should have those numbers, so I can make a note
Okay.
to get them to.
I think it'd be great to include them in future reports, because that, I looked at I've been nitpicking this for a decade now, but I look at the first service area case processing report area, and all of these things that are called outcomes really are efficiency indicators. It's what percentage are disposed in a certain amount of time. That's really an efficiency indicator. So I'm really looking for those outcomes and what difference are we making, and recidivism is certainly high on that list. So thanks for taking a look at that.
Any other commissioners? I do have a couple of questions, Andy. First of all, as I look at the total numbers filed, it just appears that in all the categories, there's a slight downward trend, which strikes me a little bit as our population goes up at, 5% or whatever it is, that our actual filings are going down. What's your explanation for the trending?
I don't really have a good one, I don't think. I think the only number that we're seeing go up is civil cases went up quite a bit last year, and I think that's because of the water issue up north. I think we had well over 100 cases.
Those cases alone probably account for that, right?
Correct, yeah, for the increase. And then the other is in our child abuse and neglect. Those were at record highs. They went down a little bit, but they're climbing as well. And really, a lot of people are trying to figure out why it is, why filings are going down. I mean, I talked to my colleagues throughout the state, and a lot of people are seeing the same thing. But yeah, in our county especially, where population is going up, you would expect it to kind of be in the other way. And I don't know if that means, in a few years, there's a lag, and in a few years, we're going to be seeing a lot more of them. But no, really, I don't have a great explanation for it.
It could be that we're doing such a great job that people
That's
aren't
probably
needing
it,
to
yeah.
use the courts as often, so it doesn't bode well for my profession, but that's fine. The other question I had is with respect to the increase in the number of PRs used. You say that that's trending up. You're up to 24% in 2018. Are we seeing any corresponding increase in non-appearance, or is it actually working?
It works, yeah. It's been working, and I can get that number to you as well. That's actually a really good one to demonstrate, because, yeah, the failure to appears have not increased as a result of that.
Okay, good. And then the last thing is just, again, to acknowledge you and your staff on the mental health court grant. That's tremendous, and we look forward to continuing to work that. Yes, Commissioner Tallon.
Sorry, one follow-up that reminded me of, I appreciate the second chance there, and that is to ask whether we have data or whether you could include some data on who in the processes of the court, which individuals and how many have a severe mental illness, and can we track that? Are we tracking that? And what are the outcomes for those folks compared to other folks in the system? So,
I will say that we do have the number. We are keeping track of it, and I actually have a report of our data of that. The only reason I hesitate to share it, even the statisticians or the people putting it together say the sample size is so small you really can't draw many conclusions. But in coming years, again, we're continuing to measure, so we will be able to have a better understanding of that.
just a quick follow-up. When you say the sample size is so small, does that mean that there are not very many people with?
I'm talking about our task court, our mental health court, and the success that we've achieved.
We're just doing it within the mental health court? Okay.
Yeah, we do keep track of how many people that present with these issues come into the jail. We have been keeping track of that for years. That was a big reason why we were able to secure the grant, is because it is such a prevalent factor when people go into the jail.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Andy. Appreciate all your work and everyone behind you in your presentation. Our next item is presentation on legislative update. Becky Beckler is here to tell us the latest, greatest from Lansing.
Thank you. It's good to be here this morning.
Well, I'm sure many of you read over the weekend, probably the biggest news was the legislature and Governor Whitmer were able to come to an agreement on transforming Michigan's automobile insurance rates. This is an issue that has been on the front burner of the legislature for over 10 years without seeming to be able to come up with an agreement, regardless of what party is in the governor's office or in the legislative leadership. It was a priority when Governor Whitmer became in her State of the State address. It was a priority for the Senate Majority Leader as well as the Speaker of the House. So I think most stakeholders anticipated that something would happen on auto no fault this year. I don't think anybody anticipated it would happen in the first months of session. But they did reach an agreement late Thursday evening, which required a Friday session, which is very unusual, especially before a holiday weekend. But they did spend most of the day waiting for the bills to be prepared, and we do have an agreement which would change our automobile insurance significantly. It offers options for personal injury protection. It also adds a fee schedule mirroring the Medicare rates. And it also bans several non-driving factors that insurers use when calculating premiums. Those include gender, marital status, zip codes, credit scores, home ownership, education levels, and occupations. However, you saw some Democrats were unhappy with this proposal, and a lot of it is because they didn't ban territories. And some of those legislators feared that Detroit would still be impacted by the territories. So we'll have options on PIP, which would require, if you go with the unlimited, which is the current situation, you get a 10% rate cut. For $500,000, that is a 20% rate cut. $250,000 is a 35% rate cut. There's also a $50,000 option with a 45% rate cut for those on Medicaid. Seniors can opt out, as well as some individuals, depending on the extent of their coverage for their private insurer. So the governor is expected to sign it. She may even sign it this week during the Detroit Chamber Conference on Mackinac Island, but it's a significant issue off the legislative table as we go through this session. So now the legislature can rely on or focus on the state budget. The Senate has passed their version of the state budget to the House. The House is preparing to do the same. They're holding back two budgets, the school aid budget and the transportation budget, in anticipation that they will need to do something as it pertains to road funding. So those budgets will stay in place should there be some type of an agreement. The Revenue Estimating Conference was held 2 weeks ago. That's the last conference that determines the numbers for the budget that they're preparing right now. For the current year, for the remainder of 2018-2019, it was estimated that the total general fund and the school aid fund would be $24.3 billion, which is an increase of just $14.9 million. And when we look at the 2019-2020 budget, it's an increase of $24.6 billion, which is just a 1.2% increase, or $282 million. So for most part, we are looking still at a flat budget, but the good news is they don't necessarily need to cut unless they want to. Both the House and the Senate are preparing budgets that do cut from the governor's recommendation. However, that doesn't mean that at the end of the day that those numbers will stay put. For the county, we're watching several pieces of the budget. The governor has proposed $80.7 million for the Indigent Defense Commission, and the House and the Senate also concurred with that. So that's good news. That's likely the number that will be used for the final product. While Raise the Age is not in the budget, it will likely be in the budget because of the significant financial impact. As Andy indicated, counties are preparing for that. Legislation has been passed. It has not been sent to the governor. The governor is asking that this be part of the budget conversation because of its cost, anywhere between $50 to $60 million. But we do know that it will be part of the budget overall calculation. For revenue sharing, the governor proposed a 3% increase. The Senate held our revenue sharing flat, while the House has proposed 2.3%. So we will probably end up somewhere in that level. I think legislators want to do a 3% increase. They were just trying to hit some numbers as they move them from one chamber to the next. So there's just some issues, as well as we're watching in the Health and Human Services budget. Senator McGregor added $6 million for local public health. He continues to want to increase funding in that area, and we appreciate those efforts. We're also watching community health funding, community mental health funding, I should say. It has not been determined, but that's something that we need to watch closely. It could have some significant impacts on the county. So those are just some areas. Clearly, 298 pilot project, which is dealing with mental health as well. While the state wants to roll that out, we continue to watch that, as it could have some implications as well. So there's several issues that we continue to watch, and we're hopeful when the legislature returns from Mackinac Island this week that they begin to focus their attention on the budget in order to get it complete by the end of the month. The House tax policy has also bringing up some legislation. If you'll recall, the U.S. Supreme Court dealt the Wayfair decision in 2018, which allowed state treasurers to receive sales tax off the internet. And in 2018, October of 2018, the state treasurer created a bulletin to allow Michigan to do just that. This legislation does two things. First, it codifies the Wayfair decision, so it will now be in state law versus a bulletin. But it also takes a step further. Not only do we want to collect the 6% off the Amazons and the eBays, but we also want to collect the 6% off those that sell their products on Amazon and eBay. It's had its first hearing. We believe that the hearing will be a second hearing in probably 2 weeks, in which Representative Afendoulis does plan to move those bills. So we'll be continuing to watch that, because hopefully that could be some additional revenue to the state. And then finally, we now have a Medicaid director. It's been a while. We've had an acting director during Governor Snyder's last few months, and then over the last 5 months, we have not had a Medicaid director. But Director Gordon was able to announce that he has offered the job to Kate Massey. She will begin her job on June 7th. She's a longtime healthcare executive that was appointed. She comes from Magellan Healthcare, and she had also worked for Kaiser Permanente. So we look forward to having that department now complete with all of its personnel. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Becky. Commissioners, any questions? Wow, not quite. Commissioner Talon.
Almost. Well, I'll just jump on that last statement and ask whether you have any suggestions or recommendations on how Kent County might establish a relationship with the new Medicaid director. It feels like that's something that we perhaps missed an opportunity with the department director, and wondering if you have any suggestions for when and how to go about doing that, so that she's aware of what the situation is in Kent County and other parts of the region.
Absolutely. Well, when she joins us on June 7th, usually the first 2 weeks, we allow the new employees to kind of get acclimated with the department. However, I'm hopeful that as with Director Gordon, who we actually, our firm held a reception for him and several individuals from the county were able to attend, at least meet with him, Director Gordon, so they got an opportunity to spend some time with him, that we'll do the same thing with this new individual, if she is available. If not, we are working with some of the individuals with the county to get a day where they can come to Lansing to do some legislative visits, and we'll incorporate that as part of our meetings. Because I think you're absolutely correct. Having a good relationship with a Medicaid director would be a smart thing to do on behalf of the county, so we will certainly make that a priority in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Melton.
I don't have a question, but Becky, I just have to tell you, every time you present, I learn, I am engaged. You truly come to us prepared, well-spoken, and I don't know how you figure out what all is going on in Lansing, because I read my paper pretty darn closely, and I couldn't come up with most of the things that you do. So I just want to thank you for your time and your energy and your commitment to educating all of us here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You have an incredible team here to work with, and not only do you just see me, but I have actually 8 others that work with Public Affairs Associates, so at any given time, they're also engaged on your issues as well.
I have one question. So with respect to the no-fault reform that has just been approved, it strikes me that components of that are just cost shifting away from the no-fault system into other systems, such as Medicaid. Is there any studies, any indication in the deliberations on what impact it will have on the cost of Medicaid, for example?
No, that's an excellent question, and that was one of the last sticking points when they dealt with how each of those levels, at the 50,000 level, originally the legislature wanted Medicaid to be able to opt out entirely, but the governor was very concerned about how the cost would impact on Medicaid. That's why they're requiring them to at least purchase a $50,000 product. I think it could have some significant implications, yet I don't think those were actually figured out, but I'll see if there were any calculations that were made over the weekend. If I can get those, I'll pass those along to you.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because as you know, the costs of Medicaid don't get absorbed until the subsequent years, and so there's always a risk there. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move on to our next item, which is the purchase of development rights selection criteria for 2019.
Sure. This is a request to the Board of Commissioners to approve the 2019 Kent County Purchase of Development Rights Selection Criteria. The Purchase of Development Rights Ordinance adopted by the Board of Commissioners in 2002 established procedures for the administration of the PDR program. By ordinance, the Kent County Agricultural Preservation Board is responsible for much of the program administration with certain items presented to the Board of Commissioners for approval. The Agricultural Preservation Board has prepared the selection criteria to be used to rank and prioritize PDR applications. Per the ordinance, the Board of Commissioners must annually approve the criteria. This year's selection criteria focuses on preservation efforts in areas with large blocks of agricultural land and consider factors such as soil type, parcel size, proximity to water and sewer, proximity to other public or private preserved land. The 2019 scoring criteria is the same used in 2018. The Agricultural Preservation Board intends to seek funding to preserve qualifying applications to the Michigan Agricultural Preservation Fund and the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. All applications need to proceed through the county process to be eligible for submittal to the Michigan Agricultural Preservation Fund and the ACEP.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve this resolution? It's moved by Commissioner Melton.
I'll support.
And supported by Commissioner Talon. Discussion? Yes, Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say that while I think if we have a purchase of development rights program, it is important to have a objective scoring system, of which I think this particular one that we've had for a number of years is very good. So in general, though, I do not think it's a good idea to have a system which will make a piece of property a farm for all of eternity. And so on that, not on any specifics of this write-up, I'll be voting no.
All right. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to note, we've been approving these for many, many years. I guess I'm kind of curious whether there have been any changes over the last 5 years. Let's say I did note that it's the same as last year. But it's just, I'm so impressed with the criteria that are part of this document. The primary piece being how productive is this land for farming? That's a huge piece. Are there improvements on the land? What size is the parcel? How much of the land surrounding it is also agricultural land? Is the local township designating that land that area as agricultural? Are there matching funds coming from a township? All things that we've talked about over the years that are part of these criteria. And I just think it's a great process and commend the Ag Board for continuing to stay on top of it. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Salfield.
Similar to what Commissioner Coleman had noted, I do have some concerns about the program. My concern focuses on funding and the fact that when this program was originally approved, I believe in 2002, it was clear then that the county was not supposed to be the funding source. This does not deal with that, so I will vote in favor of this because, as Commissioner Coleman states, it does appear to be an objective system that's used. I just wanted to put that on the record for why I would support this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? I do have one question of those who are putting this together. It identifies that this set of criteria either changes or increases the emphasis on large blocks of agricultural land. I'm not quite sure what that is. And what's the change?
Stacy Byers is here from she supports the Agricultural Preservation Board. Maybe she can answer that for us.
Good morning, Stacy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I certainly can answer that. One of the focuses of the Farmland Preservation Program, not only in Kent County but across the state of Michigan, is that we want to see sustainable agricultural operations that are viable not only today but 50, 100 years, 150 years from now. And what we have found is that agriculture supports agriculture. So we see a lot of the cross-pollination from one operation to another. And so we like to support large contiguous blocks of agricultural land. When you look around the country and we see the agribusinesses or that second tier of businesses, they tend to locate in areas that have strong agricultural land bases. roads because they have a permanent infrastructure to support them. So creating those large contiguous blocks is a big priority for the program.
So it's proximity to other lands that
Yes.
are already subject
Yes.
to the
Yes.
preservation. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, I think we're ready to vote, unless there's a request for a roll call. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. It is approved. All right, let's move to the next item, which is federal legislative priorities.
Yes, this is a request to the Board of Commissioners to approve the 2019 federal legislative priorities. Staff from the Administrator's Office met with the county federal lobbyists and department directors to discuss the proposed federal priorities for 2019. Following these discussions, a proposed list of federal priorities was presented at the March 26, 2019 Legislative and Human Resources Committee meeting for review and comment. Additional input was requested from the Board of Commissioners on April 8th. Based on the feedback from the Board of Commissioners, the list of federal priorities will focus on issues related to air traffic control, community block grant funding, healthcare coverage for inmates, and PFAS. The Administrator's Office will continue to monitor these issues and seek the Board's direction on any additional priorities that may arise throughout the year.
And let me add, at the end of this, there is an acknowledgement that there are some specific issues already that have received attention and are continuing to be examined and looked at. So they're not the intent to take them off the list. They're the intent to continue to look at them more carefully as we go forward. So, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved to approved. Support. And supported. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Hennessy.
This is, I had pluses and minuses. This is and just wanted to, an explanation. This is a very nice, short explanation. It's very simple. It's very easy to hand out and to understand the issues. It's not too complex. But that's sort of the downside of it, is that it doesn't have a lot of the specifics. For example, and I wanted to know if that's on purpose, if there's other detailed documents that will back this up. And one example would be our air traffic control tower at the airport is among the oldest in the country, and, that's not in here. So that's just one of the specifics. So I'm just curious as to, what the total approach is here.
Well, like you said, there's lots more details behind each one of these issues, and so staff, along with Commissioner Steck and our lobbyists, will continue to provide information as necessary for the particular item. In the instance of the airport, we rely heavily on the Aeronautics Board, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Bonk, and staff to provide that information, and that there's a lot there. So that's how we do it, Carol. And if there's a question that you have specifically related to any of these, or if anyone from the public, we can provide that to them.
Let me add, if I can, the process of distilling multiple perspectives on these issues into a singular statement that's submitted here is not a simple process. And you're right, by very definition of what we're trying to do, it does tend to break down into fairly summary-type language. So, you have a follow-up. I can see it in your eyes.
I do. Do we have other documents available that will provide a lot more detail, such as more details on the air traffic control tower, the community development block grant, information on the dollars to the population, and the effects? I mean, do we have more details? And we just were handed by another commissioner a whole thing on NACO, and how are we supporting or, addressing things that are of interest to this organization that we do belong to on a federal on a national basis?
Sure, we can provide you as much of that detail as you need, so we will do that.
I guess my question would be, is it available to our lobbyists if they need it? Is it already prepared?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, I would like to see it.
Sure. Let's see, Commissioner Talon, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, I distributed a copy of a legislative priority policy that Commissioner Steck and I went back and forth a bit about. It's not my intention to propose an amendment at this time. This concept is included in our ongoing issues, impact of federal immigration policy that we'll be taking a look at, but I would like to take a couple minutes during miscellaneous to review this with you so that you can give some thought to it in anticipation of dealing with it at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Talon is correct. We have gone back and forth over this language a bit. Commissioner Bonk.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And answer to Carol's question, when we became an authority, we stepped away from the umbrella of the county to some extent, and we always know that we would get support from the county on various issues, but this is one of the top priority issues with the airport authority, and we're ongoing working on that tower situation. So when you step away, you lose some friendship to a certain extent. The dotted line increases, but we know we have support with the county on that. And so I don't know if that would be directly a county priority or not.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? I think I'll acknowledge, though, I think this is the first time we've done federal priorities, is it not?
Correct, formal federal priorities, yes.
Okay. And we do have a lobbyist under retention with the county, and presumably we'll hear back from that lobbyist at some point in the future.
Yes, the plan is to have him present to us again this year. We'll hopefully see him in a few weeks as well.
Good. All right. Yes, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair. Was there any thought ever given to the whole discussion about invasive species?
I heard you. Okay. Has there been thought given to taking a public position or a priority position on invasive species?
Well, I see that the issue of the Asian carp was back in the news again, and getting funding for that. I mean, if it does get into the Great Lakes, the Grand River is going to be a prime spot for this invasive species to take hold, and there's other invasive species that the federal government just seems to turn a blind eye to. It's not just animals, it's plant species.
Understood. I think that we have at least that issue in the periphery. It has not obviously made it yet to the point of having an articulated priority statement, but there's no reason why we can't continue to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I agree.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else? All right. If not, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a resolution with respect to nurse-family partnership expansion and additional staffing.
Yes, this is a request to add 2 full-time public health nurse positions and convert 1 part-time clerk typist 2 position to full-time, and to accept and appropriate $225,000 of funding to the 2018-19 Health Fund budget. The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has made $225,000 in funding available through the Comprehensive Planning, Budgeting, and Contracting Agreement to expand the Nurse Family Partnership Program to reach the high-risk population that currently is not being served by the NFP program. The NFP program provides intensive services to first-time, low-income mothers in high-risk areas of Kent County. The program's primary focus is to enroll minority women and help them to improve skills in the areas of maternal and child physical health, education and employment, family and friend support, and preventing child abuse and neglect. To support the work required by the expansion of the NFP, 2 full-time public health nurse positions will be created, and a current .6 FTE clerk typist 2 position will be converted to a full-time FTE position. The annual cost of salary and benefits for the 2 positions in the conversion of the clerk typist 2 position to full-time is $166,000 and $28,000 respectively. The remaining $29,000 in funding will be used to cover the cost of required training, supplies, mileage, and indirect cost. If grant funding is eliminated or decreased, the position will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to the fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
Thank you, Wayman. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Okay, it was moved and supported that the resolution be approved. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Hennessy.
The Nurse Family Partnership, is that the program that works with the moms, especially the first-time moms for the first 2 years of their life? And that, working with them the first time out will help to make a difference in the outcome? I see nods going yes. Okay. And that has been going on long enough now that we do see outcomes from it?
Morning, Commissioners. Yes, Nurse Family Partnership is something we're very proud of at the Kent County Health Department because we have wonderful outcomes. However, despite our wonderful outcomes, we still have huge disparities in infant mortality in Kent County. In Kent County, black babies die at about twice the rate of white babies, and in the city of Grand Rapids, it's about 3 times the rate. So we still are in the battle trying to make a difference. And Nurse Family Partnership was funded initially specifically because of the disparity in infant mortality. And so Senator McGregor went to bat for us at the state level to get some funding to allow us to expand our program to reach more moms. And so it's a very intensive program, and the outcomes are fabulous, but they only touch the moms we touch. So if we touch more moms, we're going to see more and better outcomes. Specifically, outcomes that we're seeing is around infant mortality and all the things that contributed to that. So things like moms having prenatal care and having a safe sleep environment and making sure that the babies are up to date in their vaccinations and have a medical home and all of those items. And Nurse Family Partnership has another unique aspect that other home visiting programs don't tend to have, in that it focuses on an element of employment. We know that babies born and raised in poverty have greater health risks, and so Nurse Family Partnership focuses in on helping those first-time moms get back to school and finish their degree and get a job that they can sustain themselves and their baby. And so it is a very intense program. A nurse carries a caseload of 25 to 30 clients at any time, but they get lots of visits, and we very carefully prioritize our moms with the greatest need into Nurse Family Partnership.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Bonk.
Yes, at one time I thought we celebrated that we were closing the gap with the infant mortality rate, and we were making some real headway with the programs that we initiated, and now I hear something different than I've heard before.
No, actually, you're hearing the same thing. It used to be worse, if you can believe it. As bad as it is today, it used to be worse. And so we are making progress, and those are some of the outcomes that we're proud of, but we just need more. We need to bring it to scale. Right now, the families that we're touching are doing great, but we're not touching enough families. So the addition of 2 more nurses will help us to reach more families.
Yes, go ahead.
How much better is it today than it was 10 years ago or whatever the last measure was?
There was a time when in the city, 5 years ago is the last data that I have, in the county of Kent, which is now about a 2-to-1 ratio, between African Americans and whites. At that time, it was 3-to-1. We also are seeing the overall numbers come down. The disparity is closing, and the overall numbers are coming down. And so we're really focusing in on what we can do to close the disparity completely. A goal that we get along with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is 0 preventable deaths. We know that some infant mortality is going to happen particularly in relationship to birth defects, things that we cannot control, things like genetic disorders and et cetera. but many of our infant deaths are preventable. They're related to safe sleep, they're related to other unsafe practices like not having car seats. There's a variety of things that contribute to infant death that we can prevent. And despite the fact that we're moving in the right direction, there's a huge complicator right now, and that is the opioid crisis. So very often, moms who are using opioids, it's not even that the opioids cause birth defects, it's that the mom's not a safe caretaker after the baby's born.
Thank you for your good work, and thank you for your passion.
You're welcome.
Any other commission, excuse me, Commissioner Melton?
I seem to be the bearer of great news today. Our foster daughter, or adopted daughter, who's not truly adopted, it doesn't matter, whatever, she delivered a baby 3 weeks ago, C-section, and she has been enrolled in your program, was seen prior to her delivery, and she doesn't like anybody, and she can't wait for the nurse to come in. She's learning, but the nurse also, there's so much praise that goes on, and Quintasia just absolutely eats that up because it's not something she's been raised with, and so it's a no-brainer for me.
Any other commissioners? I do have a question on the funding of this. What's the current level of the county funding for this program before we get to the supplemental?
Right now, there's a federal program called MICV, which stands for Maternal Infant Child Home Visiting Program, and they fund about 2/3 of Nurse Family Partnership. The other 1/3 is a mix between Medicaid, cost-based reimbursement, and general fund. So we are fully funded for 6 nurses, a supervisor, and a .6 clerk. This will allow us to expand till 8 nurses.
And the funding, as I understand it, came from that supplemental decision from the legislature in December of 2018. What's the potential for that to be replicated or perpetuated in the 2020 budget?
I asked Senator McGregor that, and he said they would have to act to take it out. So it is in the budget for the next 5 years. They could make cuts to the budget and remove it, but right now it is in the budget for the next 5 years.
Okay. At that level?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Stepp. And an infant is defined as what? The first year?
Birth to the first birthday.
Okay.
Further comments or questions? If not, we're ready to vote. All
If I
those-
could add to
Yes.
Mr. Ponstein's note, the fact that it's from birth, many of the infants that die related to, that influence our infant mortality rate, have taken 1 or 2 breaths. So they may have only lived a few minutes, but they still add to that number. So we're not necessarily talking babies that were born healthy, brought home, and then died during the first year.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is approved. Thank you. All right, the next item, number 8, involves the KCCA Annual Budget Weatherization Program and the addition of a position.
This is a request of the board to add 1 full-time weatherization and housing specialist and accept and appropriate $737,399 to the Kent County Community Action Fund, and to authorize board chair designee to execute the documents related to the funds and approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award, contingent upon receipt of award and execution of the contract. Kent County Community Action have received notification of its pending allocation of funding from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services as part of the Department of Energy Weatherization Assistance Program. This marks the 46th consecutive year of funding beginning in 1973. Kent County Community Action has weatherized over 8,100 dwellings since the inception of the weatherization program in Kent County and expects to add 75 units dwellings with this funding. This grant includes funding for administrative, supportive, and technical training expenses, as well as funding for labor and materials and health and safety measures installed in customers' dwellings. For the new grant period of July 1, 2019 through June 30 of 2020, the Kent County Community Action will receive $119,000 in increased funding from its current grant. The cost of the new Housing and Weatherization Special Position is $70,000, and the increased grant funds will cover the cost of the new position. This position is designed to improve service delivery and allow for succession planning with Weatherization Assistance Program, since the technical certifications can take between 2 and 4 years to obtain. If the grant funding is eliminated or decreased, the position will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to the fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
Is there a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Melton, supported? Supported by Commissioner Hennessy. Discussion. Yes, Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. So Wayman, if I'm, again, looking at math here, 119,000 in the grant, but it looks like we're only spending about 71,000. So where's the other 48,000 going?
I think it's programming, but let's have Susan Cervantes from the department help with that answer.
Good morning. The additional funds will be used for the labor and material and the health and safety measures that will be installed on the dwellings.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll assume we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. It is approved. All right, next item on the agenda is miscellaneous. Anyone have any miscellaneous? Yes, Commissioner Talon, you have something.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate your letting me just take a minute to review this proposed federal legislative priority document that I distributed. Wanted to preface it by saying that I spent over a year on NACO task force that took a look at immigration policy, how those policies affect counties, and came up with a number of recommendations for policy items that that were taken a look at by the NACO board at its legislative conference earlier this year. And several items were adopted as interim policies. And you see those in this near the bottom of the bottom 2/3 of the document that I distributed. The three areas that NACO came to some agreement about are comprehensive immigration reform, workforce and economy, and supportive services and resident well-being. I just want to take a second to read the supportive services, because that's the piece that I thought made sense for us to adopt something like as a commission. Number one, because I think it makes sense for us to be concerned about how the implementation of immigration policy is affecting residents of this community and how it's affecting the delivery of health services, public health, mental health, and so on. But also because it's the right thing to do, I think. So NACO said counties across the nation fund and administer federal, state, and local programs that support the health and successful development of all residents, including immigrant populations. Federal immigration policies that impact families or children can unintentionally affect the ability of counties to provide supportive services to residents, often resulting in additional strain to local budgets. And the NACO policy is that counties urge the federal government to carry out its enforcement of immigration law in a manner that minimizes negative impacts on families and children and does not increase reliance on local safety net services or create new demands and administrative costs for counties. So I took that language and adopted it to our Kent County situation, and the position that I would like to suggest that we consider and take a look at is that we urge federal government to carry out its enforcement of immigration law in a manner that minimizes negative impacts on families and children and does not increase reliance on social safety net services or create new demands and administrative costs for counties. So really asking that we support our immigrant community in Kent County with this, and it really is something that I think our departments would be supportive of, because they are the ones that are seeing the impact on families that they serve when immigration policy is enforced in such a way that it negatively impacts those families. A family member is taken away. So appreciate your pondering on that, and hopefully this will come up on a future agenda. Thank you.
Commissioner Melton, did you have anything?
I have one.
The Sheldon House Break the Stigma Breakfast was last Tuesday. I'm on the board, and several commissioners were there, and a member of our Sheriff's Department, administration. We've heard very positive things. I hope that you all took something away positive, but most importantly, those who were attending that morning, number one, it was twice as many as were there last year, and probably 20% have somehow given a message to those of us on the board that they learned a lot. They were glad to know that this resource was available, and hopefully, if that continues, in giving persons a place to go, a place to belong, a place to learn, perhaps we can decrease the number of persons that our Sheriff's Department sees in their jail systems. And so it was a very successful morning.
Good, thank you. It was Commissioner Salfield.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that I just want to point out, I guess, because it's coming up now that we're doing federal priorities, which is new, and I've not seen it as much with our state priorities, but I'm kind of seeing it here. We got a little lesson in civics. We got to be careful that this board is not overstepping its authority on some of these areas. I think Commissioner Vaughn pointed out the air traffic control tower. You know, does that really belong more with the new authority, which has its own lobbyists, to be addressing that? Similarly, what Commissioner Talon handed out deals with enforcement of immigration law. Enforcement in Kent County would be with the Sheriff's Department, which is a separately elected office. It is not done by the Board of Commissioners. And I just think we got to be careful as we look at some of these priorities. I'm not sure why it's coming up in this context, but I kind of have noted it as we've worked on these federal priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair, and I just wanted to also thank you for alluding to bail reform that's coming up. Wanted to give this committee a little bit of an update about what's going on. I know it was listed under the ongoing issues for state priorities, and obviously in my day job in Lansing with State Representative LeGrand, I'm keenly aware of what's going on this particular issue. Did want to let everyone know that the bill package that Rep. LeGrand, the bipartisan bill package that he's put forward, we'll be getting a hearing next month, so a couple of weeks from now. Basically, what it does is put the SCAO court rules into statute to make those a little bit more enforceable, give additional information to judges so that they can use their discretion, and should have a somewhat of a savings for jails and the Sheriff Department. That remains to be seen, but that is what we're seeing in other states that have implemented something broadly similar to what's being proposed here. Already has the support of MAC, as well as waiting for substitutes conditional support from district and circuit court judges, organizations, and the prosecutors. So since I'm working on them later today after this meeting, I'll send you those substitutes probably in a week or two to take a look at, and perhaps we can address that as it moves through the legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us up to date on that. Yes, Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify that the enforcement of immigration policies is not the responsibility of the Kent County Sheriff. It is the responsibility of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Just want to be clear about that in regard to a statement that was made earlier. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else If not, let me just add to that conversation a little bit in acknowledging Commissioner Salfield's admonition as we put our toes into the federal priority conversation. This is new territory for us. We have looked at some of these, obviously, some of these issues, including the immigration issue that Commissioner Talon raises, and we've had conversations about that outside of our meetings, continue to require further consideration and deliberation and analysis. Want to make very clear that the fact that they are not on our list, and there's thousands of issues that aren't on this list that have federal implications, is not the same thing as saying we are either adopting or rejecting any statement with respect to that. We just simply haven't distilled that to the point of being able to articulate it in a policy that we believe that this commission should consider and then take a position on. So even with respect to your proposed language, it is being submitted. We have received it, and we are continuing to look at that and analyze that. But I don't want you or the rest of the public to draw a conclusion that we've said yes or no to anything in that regard. So. All right. Any other miscellaneous? If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.